Welcome to the Charity Changemakers podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and action for the changemakers of the world. Each week, we dive deep into the world of impactful charities. We connect you with the passionate leaders, the innovative ideas, and the real-world stories that are making a difference. Whether you're a seasoned non-profit professional or just starting out, this podcast is your chance to learn from the best and get fired up to make a positive change. We'll explore the challenges and triumphs of running a successful charity. We'll hear about the fundraising strategies, impactful programs, and the stories of the people whose lives are being transformed. But most importantly, we'll leave you feeling empowered and equipped to take action in your community and the organisations in which you work. So, buckle up, Changemakers, because we're about to embark on a journey of inspiration and impact.
Today on the Charity Changemakers podcast, I'm joined by Laura Reid, who's the Chief Executive of Marwell Wildlife. Many of you will know Marwell for the zoo based down in Hampshire, but actually, and you'll see and hear more through the conversation, huge amounts of work going on, not just here in Hampshire where I live and where the zoo is based, but across the globe. It's a really insightful and encouraging and engaging conversation that I hope you're really going to enjoy. Particularly because Laura's got quite an interesting career journey into her role here at Marwell Wildlife. She comes from a background of retail and hospitality, and her first experience of the non-profit charity sector is actually volunteering on Trustee boards and within her daughter's local preschool as well. There's loads of insights in this conversation, lots that you're going to hear, lots that you're going to enjoy, and lots of takeaways for you. So look, no more from me. Let's get on and meet our changemaker. Laura, thank you so much for coming along onto the Changemakers, Charity Changemakers podcast here with us today. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm sure we're going to hear lots of really exciting stories from the last 6 months in your current role and how you got there. But we'd like to start off our podcast with some quickfire questions, a bit of an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit better. So firing straight on in there, straight in the firing line with, where's the most interesting place you've ever visited?
Oh, that's a really tricky one because I do love to travel and I've been really lucky to travel to a lot of exciting places in the world. I think at the moment my top one is Guatemala. We did it as part of a trip last summer with my family. We did Belize and then crossed into Guatemala, and it was just fantastic. It was an amazing place, amazing people. Obviously, the wildlife was incredible. Howler monkeys playing on our roof at 2 a.m, and we went off and did sunrise over Mayan ruins, and it was incredible. Yeah, really, really beautiful country. So that's winning at the moment, but check back in a year, it might be different.
Yes, yeah, no, fantastic. No, we would love to do that. I'm not sure about monkeys on the roof at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yes. Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And second quickfire question for you then. What are you reading at the moment?
So I literally just started a novel last night. I got it for my birthday, which was last week. It's just like a thriller novel called Everybody is Lying. I don't think it's great literature from what I've read so far, but it's entertaining and it lets you switch off at the end of the day before you go to sleep. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, superb. And that might be the answer to our next question. But the quickfire number 3 is always, what do you like to do outside of work to relax?
I don't think I ever do relax. I think my friends and my husband would tell you I just constantly keep going. But I think spending time with friends and family, definitely entertaining, eating, that forms quite a significant part. But travel really. When I take downtime from work, it really is getting away, getting abroad, seeing different cultures and different landscapes and countries. It's what we as a family love to do.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great, lovely, and thank you for sharing. And like I say, really grateful for you coming on today. Those that have been on previously, and those that people that are listening, we'll find some really insightful conversation and really interesting career journeys as to how people have found themselves in the charity sector. And particularly interested in your story because it comes from a very commercial retail type background and making that transition into the sector. And I guess first experiences within the sector, potentially within Trustee, volunteer roles rather than paid positions. But so I mean, I know it's a big question, but talk us through that career journey and that route into the sector, or how it kind of, your opportunity to work and serve within the sector came about.
So it's been a random one. So I suppose it's not just about the charity sector, but also about the conservation sector. So I did my degree in biological sciences at University of Warwick, with a focus on conservation and conservation science and ecology. Really passionate about it, wanted to get into working within that field, working for an NGO, really struggled to find a way in. Didn't know how to do it, couldn't find a way in that didn't involve volunteering and not earning any money and not being able to be financially independent, which was important to me at the time. So I went a different path. I took time out like a lot of people do after university and did some travelling then. Went to some amazing places looking at conservation projects, but still couldn't quite understand for me how to get into the sort of that world. So I fell back on what I knew, which was hospitality, catering, retail, and licensed retail management, really. And I ended up going into that as a graduate on the graduate scheme for Mitchells and Butlers. So I was working within one of the biggest retail and hospitality businesses in the country, working in branded pub and restaurant operations, with some sort of late night venue stuff as well. And I did that for 10 years. So I was quite happily and following in my father's footsteps, because my dad was in the pub industry for his entire career. So I think he was kind of pleased. But yeah, happily working away in that industry, really. And thought that's kind of where I'd always be. Sort of carved out my niche. It was obviously very commercial, but it was really people focused, which I loved. It was all about developing leadership skills and leading teams, both remotely and also sort of on the ground as well. And then I decided after I had my second child to leave that industry. I just wanted to take a step out. I wanted to spend time at home, and I had my 4.5-year career break, as I call it. I don't remember much of a break, but I within that time I started in sort of being a little bit involved in the charity sector, in so much that I chaired my daughter's preschool committee, and that was a charity. And so that was my first step really into the charity world, and learning about governance and learning about all the things that go with that, and the finance of a charity and charity commission and everything.
Yeah.
So that was sort of interesting. I still wasn't working at that time. I'd had my third child as well during that time, so had my hands quite full. And still, sort of wasn't really planning on going back to work, anything sort of full time anyway, when I had a call from a friend who was working within the real estate industry. I've been junior this person, worked with this person previously in Mitchells and Butlers, actually. It's a very, very dear friend. And he said, look, I'm just making you aware there is a job coming up local to you within my company. I think you should apply for it. And it was the role that I had at Westkey. So for those who don't know, the local area where we're from down here in the South Coast, Westkey is the really big retail, leisure, dining, events estate within the centre of Southampton. So it's about 2 million square foot, and it's a couple of very big buildings, big outside area, and it's I thought, what on earth do I know about running a shopping centre? Ultimately. And he said, it doesn't matter, it's all about leadership, it's all about people, it's all about transferable skills, it's all commercial. So, cut a long story short, I was successful in applying for that role, and suddenly found myself back in the big bad corporate world, running Westkey, and that was in January 2020. So,
yes, right, okay. So, quite a time to be joining a retail business.
Especially running a retail and leisure attraction, ultimately. So within 6 weeks, we were closed and having to manage through the pandemic. So it was certainly a baptism of fire. But during those lockdown sort of months, it emerged that Southampton was going to bid for City of Culture for 2025. And that was really exciting to me. I've grown up near Southampton. I've grew up 25 minutes away, the city I knew, and I thought could always have a much more potential than it sort of realised. And that City of Culture bid was something that really spoke to me about how that could be done. And I knew it was something as West Quay, being such a fundamental part of the fabric of the city, we had to be involved with. So as the momentum built behind the bid, I pushed for us to become a seasonal partner to actually sort of financially invest in the bid process. And we were sort of working with the team that were putting the bid together, meeting other stakeholders. The whole city really came around this this City of Culture bid and really galvanised, and it was a really exciting thing to be part of. And as a output of sort of our involvement, I applied to become a trustee for the 2025 City of Culture Trust, which sort of sat behind the bid, as the charitable element. And that's the first time I'd ever been a trustee. I've been on boards at this point. I was on other boards, but that was the first time I'd been a trustee of a charity. And that was a really amazing sort of learning curve, clearly. We went through the bid process. We didn't win. We officially say we came second, although that may not be a bit of a stretch, but the other cities also who were runners up did very well too. But we then wanted to grow the legacy of all that work that had been done, and not just chalk it up and say, "Well, move on," because so much has been achieved for the good of the city. So we instead decided, as a board of trustees and with our CEO, Claire Whitaker, that we wanted to form really go to having this as the cultural trust for the city. Yeah. And at that point, our chair stepped down. She was, sort of decided that she'd done what she was there to do, which was take us through the bid process. And I was asked to become chair of that trust. And I still am. And it's absolutely incredible. I'm really, really proud of what we have achieved and continue to achieve, and what we still will achieve in the future in terms of Southampton and the cultural activation, tourism, festival event strategies, and the difference that we're making there, which is great. But then it kind of gave me this other hat to wear. I was still working for Hampton, running West Quay, and also chairing what was going to become Southampton Forward, or sort of the organisational name still is the Southampton Cultural Trust, but trading as Southampton Forward. And so that was sort of really my first real understanding of charity governance, really, sort of a bigger charity with bigger sums of money involved and with a wider remit.
And do you think within your career to that point, I mean, you obviously talked about, that very start from your education, your qualification, that yearning to be involved in, charitable setting, or trying to make that work, and thinking about, the work that you're trying to get into. Is there also sort of a community yearning within you? Because I mean, from working in that commercial retail to saying, no, this is my city and I want to make a difference here.
I think it's always been in me that I've wanted to make a difference. So, even though West is a really commercial entity, it's full of brands paying rent and, generating football and generating profit for shareholders and all the rest. I tried really hard to make it more than just that. I tried to do the good for the local community, whether that be hosting the first ever Diwali event that was held in Southampton city centre, to supporting other charities, letting them come in, use the space, trying to improve our sort of equity and inclusion within the space, and obviously the cultural elements as well. We through my work at West Quay, I was able to sort of put together Multi-Stories, which is a street art event in our car park, which gave local communities the chance to express their story of Southampton through street art, skateboarding, breakdancing, music. And that event had its second year this year without me at the helm, but it carried on, and I hope that carries on for many years. And that was about giving back something to the community. So certainly within me, there's always been this sort of want to make a difference. And I think as time went on with West Quay, I'd sort of taken it through the pandemic, as I said, and then it was about, well, what's next? And what I knew really when I was looking for my next opportunity, that I wanted it to be in something that I felt made a difference, and it wasn't just about generating money for the sake of generating money, for shareholders or owners or whoever it will be to
Yeah.
buy the portion.
Yeah, and I wonder when when you're in that role in working in retail and in that commercial setting, and and you sort of talk about that decade of hospitality before that. I mean, when you saw the job advertised for chief executive of Marwell Wildlife, kind of what was the reaction? Did you think, yeah, blimey, this is for me, or was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I knew Marwell. I've grown up down the road. I came here as a child on a school trip. I'd taken my children here, several times. It was really familiar to me, and I'd probably even joked, well, eventually, you've got to run Marwell Zoo, haven't you? Sort of thing. But when I saw the advert, I was just like, oh my goodness, there it is. That is the perfect job, because not only is it a charity, it's people, it's conservation, it's doing good, it's where people come to have fun as well, and a great day out, and that guest experience, that visitor experience is still a really big part of the role as well, and making sure that's brilliant. And it's animals, and it's who wouldn't want to do it? So yes, it certainly spoke to me in volumes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose so many elements of your career, across when you think about what the zoo delivers in, outside of the animals, you think about, visitor attraction, hospitality, restaurant, cafe, all of that whole offering, retail. There's clearly so many transferable skills as well as that passion piece for you as well.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Yes, I think that's the key. I mean, it is an incredibly varied organisation. I joke to my friends and family, I can go from speaking about the service times of afternoon tea to how we're going to collar snow leopards in Kazakhstan within the course of a couple of hours. You really do have to sort of be able to switch between different sort of strands of thinking quite quickly. But that's what I love, because I love the variety of that. And I love the different the things I learn, and I've learned an awful lot even within 4 months. I've learned an awful lot about the animals, about how we care for them, how we maximise their animal welfare. Just the sort of like jargon and lingo that goes alongside that is a whole new language. It's brilliant. And I hope that I'm able, that I am bringing the skills that I've learned over my career to bear here. That's certainly the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we speak to people here on a weekly basis, daily basis, that are thinking about making that transition from a commercial to charity sector, and very much driven by that, wanting to make a difference and to do something where they feel that there's a bit more value. I guess I'm interested a little bit in what that journey for you in that application process and then interviewing with the organisation, what that was like, coming from a different sector and into charity sector, how that was for you, and I guess that process and what it looked like.
Well, I think I was lucky that the trustees that interviewed me, they were clearly looking for someone with a commercial background. I think that was part of the remit of what they wanted. I guess I was sort of confident in answering the questions around that, because that's my background. And I was very open through that process about needing to learn the sort of more the animal side of it, and the veterinary side of it, and the conservation side of it. Although I had that conservation sort of background, historic, may I say, 20 years ago I graduated, but it was still there. The knowledge is still there. The interest has always been there. So I think that process, it was obviously, it robust, I guess, the process of going through, as you would expect. But ultimately, leading a charity or leading a commercial organisation or whatever it might be, you're still talking about leadership of people, and that's a transferable tool. People are people, and the reason that people work in a charity might be sort of more vocational, but they still want to be led in an open, honest way, transparent and vulnerable way. They still want someone who's going to be getting the best out of them, no matter what. So it was getting that across, I think, through the interview process, that's what I hope I could bring, is getting the best out of the team that are here, developing them, and being able for them to be able to deliver their job in the best way that they can. And that, in this instance, is for the good of a charitable output.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, that reflection, that the fact that, the trustees, the organisation, were really open to seeing someone come from a commercial background, weren't necessarily for someone that had charity chief executive on the CV for 20, 30 years, but actually saying, well, no, look, this is who we are, this is how we deliver work, and we need people that come with a variety of different skills and experiences as part of this process. And that openness to exploring, just clearly from the Marwell Wildlife's point of view, opens up the candidate pool hugely for them to consider, which is I think always.
I've seen the same in other settings that are similar to here, and others. I mean, okay, we're not just a zoo. We have the conservation arm as well, and the charitable output. I would never say that Marwell Wildlife is just a zoo, because it's certainly not. It's a very, very special place. And yes, we happen to have a zoo, but we're such a forward-thinking, sort of the way we look after our animals, the way our landscape is, where our habitats are constructed, everything is so forward-thinking that even sort of looking around the rest of the zoo sector, there's several chief executives now actually that have come from outside of either the industry or of charity, that have come from different backgrounds. So clearly the sector is moving that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think that is? What value do you think people that come from, like you say, different backgrounds, experiences bring to an organisation?
Well, I think within the charity sector, money is always a premium. I mean, that sounds weird, but it's any surplus is ploughed back into charitable outputs. So they're not necessarily always going to have had the most modern or most innovative sort of people leadership skills, courses, developments, whereas corporate companies do invest quite heavily in that. So people that have been in a corporate environment would have probably had a higher level of coaching or, different sort of executive training courses, different development. That means that they can kind of bring those skills within the charity sector. Whereas if you just live and breathe inside a charity sector, you're probably not getting access to some of those sort of more modern and sort of innovative, development tools. So I think there's a lot to be gained from bringing people in from other industries. It doesn't necessarily have to be a commercial sort of industry, but equally, the visitor, if it's a charity that also is attached to a visitor attraction, which many are, be those heritage-based, be those zoo-based like ours, or museum, anything like that, the cost of operating those are significant, really significant, and have risen exponentially in the last few years. And having a commercial eye on those and how you can drive income to offset some of that cost is going to become more and more important for charities. And having someone who's got those skills, who can do that, who've learned from, how to manage a P&L ultimately from a commercial sector, is going to be quite vital. Yeah.
And is there something about that being able to be, I don't know, like you say, innovative, but also flexible? Because I don't know the ins and outs of running a zoo, Laura. You can put me right here, but I would imagine that the weather has something that's completely outside of your control. It can have a huge impact on what your visitor numbers and therefore income looks like, surely on a week by week basis.
Absolutely, yes, it does hugely, and you've got to learn to part of my remit, particularly here, is about how we diversify income streams, so we're not just relying on sun shining. And I think all charities that have a visitor attraction attached, if it's a museum and it's all inside, it's the ultimate opposite. If the sun's typical for them, sun shines, everything's quiet, it's dead. We want the opposite thing. And for us, where we're outside, we look at the rain and go, God, there's no one going to come. But part of our jobs, CEOs of those kind of organisations that have that as their main income stream, have got to find a way to diversify income. So we're protected from what we cannot control. Definitely.
Yes,
So that kind of agile thinking and that flexibility is normally learned within a commercial environment. Mum and I worked for years in central London running an Irish pubs where no beer gardens, because they were all totally landlocked. If you wanted to drink your pint outside, you stood on the street corner in the city or in Soho. And so the weather killed it. So you had to be innovative about how you were going to make hay when it rained. In that case, not when the sun shone, but or how you're going to diversify your income by, doing takeaway, and in the years before everywhere did takeaway. So having that kind of pressure on your income from a commercial corporate environment can translate. to now.
Yeah.
It's not about income and it's not about just profit. It's about surplus, so we can reinvest it into charitable output.
Yeah. And you're a few months in, obviously, to your tenure at Marwell, and how's that transition been? How are you finding it? Where are those? I don't know, where are those opportunities for quick wins, those opportunities to learn the organisation? What's it looked like over the last few months?
Oh, it's been brilliant. It's been really, really good. I mean, I still feel like there's so much to know and so much to learn. I mean, there's bits of it's a 300-acre estate, so there's bits I haven't been to yet. I haven't got there, But I mean, in my first few weeks, I spent a lot of time with my exec team, my team of directors, getting to know them and their priorities and what keeps them awake at night, but also managed to spend a lot of time with the animal teams, which was fab. Because again, clearly for me, that's the bit I know the least about in terms of what does it mean to be a hoofstock keeper? What are your pressures? What does it mean to sort of, with carnivores, and what's the difference between them? So I was really lucky. I got to spend time with each of those teams, like a half a day with each. I fed tigers, I fed giraffes, I mucked out lemurs, met the binturong, and if anyone doesn't know what a binturong is, I called it a tree badger because that's what it looks like. It's a big huge creature that sort of lives in the tree. Very strange, but beautiful.
Everyone's madly Googling now as they listen to that. Yeah.
They are special. But yeah, so I was really lucky to get all that sort of but I also spent some time with the retail teams, the catering teams, getting to know their pressures as well. And that sort of like the light bulb moment where they realised I spoke their language was great. So that was really nice, and sort of seeing where's your quick wins, where's your blockers, where's your barriers, how can we take them away as quickly as possible. So we're ready this summer to do the best we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I mean,
it's
been 4 months. In a way, it feels like 4 weeks, and in a way, it feels like 4 years because there's just so much that comes across. And so, like I said, it's a really varied organisation. I was also lucky. I mean, big part of a role like this as well is that advocacy piece and that external stakeholder management piece. So beginning of May, I went over to Morocco. I went to a Sahara and Sahel conservation conference because that's a lot of where our conservation work takes place. We've kind of got a bit of a niche that we're one of the only conservation charities that are doing in situ conservation projects in North Africa. It's quite a hard area to work in for obvious reasons, climate stability, etc. But that's where a lot of our conservation projects are based. So meeting some of those stakeholders and some of the people that we work with and some of our own teams that are based there was great, was really, really useful. And that's sort of, again, so different from my previous life, really.
Yeah, and maybe it would be good if you could share a little bit about, because like you say, of course you are a zoo, but you're so much more than a zoo. Maybe share a little bit of the work that Marwell, are doing as an organisation, and that conservation, that obviously spans much further than, the estate in Hampshire.
It definitely does. I mean, the estate in Hampshire is a great place to start because it is beautiful. We're within the South Downs National Park, where the zoo itself is 145 acres, but the envelope around it is about 300. And we are working hard to sort of do a lot of habitat management on our own site for our own British native species. We are trying to make sure that we're preserving our own biodiversity here. I mean, biodiversity in the UK is one of the fastest falling and most threatened biodiversity of any country in the world. We sort of think of climate change and we think of how it's impacting, all the places around the equator and, the cutting down the Amazon. Actually, biodiversity here in our country is declining really, really rapidly. So working to reverse that is equally as important as our overseas work. So here, like for example, in Hampshire, we breed sand lizards for re-release back into the wild, which are a critically endangered species. We're soon to open, early next year, we'll be opening our white claw crayfish breeding centre as well, which is a Hampshire species. It's in our chalk streams and is again endangered and under threat from an invasive species. So the fact that we can do that here at the zoo is great. Yeah. And we also hold a lot of species that are endangered or managed by European endangered species programs as well. So captive breeding for genetics of population, maintaining an ARC population with strong genetic makeup so that we have got a backup plan if these animals in the wild suddenly start disappearing. Is a big part of what we do. It's, it is a lot. There's a lot to it. A zoo is not, well, a modern zoo certainly should not be a menagerie of animals that people just come, pay their money and see and tick off a list. That's not the purpose. It's a lovely byproduct that people can engage with and connect with species and see things in person that they may not ever have the chance to see. But primarily, we are here to facilitate these animals being safe, ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's sort of UK based, but then we also have many overseas programs, and we're quite different from some other organisations such as us, in that we do our own conservation in situ. We have our own field teams. We oversee our own projects. So we have Tunisia. We've got within some protected areas of Tunisia, we do habitat restoration, anti-poaching. We manage captive breeding populations for re-release into the wild of things like scimitar horned oryx, slender horned gazelle. That is sort of species very much antelope focused. And Marwell's got a history of sort of hoofstock and antelope conservation. It was John Knowles, the founder, was a particular fan of things with horns and hooves. And these species are critically endangered. The scimitar horned oryx was extinct in the wild. And through a combined conservation effort between us and other partners, ZSL were involved. There was a range of partners across Europe and the Middle East that were involved and did translocations of the species back into the wild. Those animals are now no longer extinct. They're endangered still, but they're not extinct in the wild. So, that just goes to show it's a 35 years worth of work, but it goes to show the difference these in situ projects do actually make. So, Tunisia, North Africa, a lot of work there. We also work in northern Kenya on the Grevy's zebra. So the Grevy's zebra is a very, very pretty zebra. She's the prettiest, we believe. Not to put down the others. But it's, again, very endangered in the wild, suffered from a lot of drought, and that is climate change driven. And we work over there to protect the Grevy's zebra populations and to aim to grow them. We engage with communities. We have education programs in schools. We do community outreach through having scouts who will go out and actually scout the areas that are paid for, sort of by us to do that, or by our partners who fund our work. But we're the ones sort of overseeing that work. And then we also have in Bhutan, we have a program. We were given a legacy for tiger conservation, and we've invested money into Bhutan, and we're doing a project there on cultural representations within Buddhism of tigers and other big cats, and highlighting the cultural significance of big cats within the religion and within the culture of the country, to then hopefully follow that on with a piece around reducing human and wildlife conflict. So trying to make sure that within the psyche of the people within Bhutan, these creatures are important and that they should be protected.
Yeah. So incredible programs happening all over the world. It just
as well as
that's right, indeed. Yeah. And how do you fund that? I mean, you talked a little bit about partnership working, but how do you fund that amount of work and delivery? Because I'm a Hampshire resident, and I might not necessarily see all of that that's going on. And aware of just the massive work and conservation across the globe.
Really, we are reliant on grants, donations, other zoos, other charities giving us money to fund it. Historically, Marwell is a conservation charity, and money has been coming from the zoo itself, obviously into conservation, and we still do that as much as we're able. But as everyone knows, the pandemic and the subsequent cost of living crisis has not been easy on any of us, and costs have, like I say, gone up a lot. So an income has not matched that, because you can't put your ticket prices up to something that's unaffordable when you're in a cost of living crisis. So it's tricky. It is tricky, and one of my main jobs, and the thing that probably keeps me up at night the most, is balancing the books. And I'm sure that would probably be the same from any charity CEO that you've spoken to, because you just want more money to be able to do more good. That is difficult. So we have to be as creative as we can, and we have to make sure that we have got a great guest experience here. And I'm sort of in the middle. I say in the middle. I wish I was in the middle. I'm very much at the beginning. of writing our organisational strategy for Marwell 2035 and what this organisation is going to look like. And that is all around diversifying our income, having different sorts of offers, having different sort of what reasons to visit us, so that we can produce a bigger surplus to invest more into these conservation programs and drive that agenda even harder, and to really put ourselves, in an even stronger position to make a difference, both here in the UK and abroad.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge piece of work, isn't it? Taking an organisation the size of Marwell through an organisational strategy, and so many stakeholders internally and externally, I guess, that are involved in that. That fact finding and process.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've got some great people here with some very, very big brains. So I'm lucky, and some people have got some really good logic. So we can do it, and it will be great. And we will have to invest a certain amount, and there'll be a certain amount of risk. But it's risk that I'm comfortable that we can realise returns on. But just sort of infrastructure in the zoo dates back to the 70s. So to take it forward, we're going to have to intervene with that, and we're going to have to increase our sort of amenity levels. Number of animals that we have, type of animals that we have. Looking at that as well. Looking at our species plan, looking at our accommodation provision, not to give any spoilers away, but that could be something we could be moving to if it comes to bear that is a way to go. But looking at all these different options to make Marwell really relevant for future generations, and it's loved. It is loved in Hampshire. Just make sure it continues to be so and continue to deliver our charitable output.
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk to chief executives, I'm always really interested as to where they get that support and that learning and that peer-to-peer potential support. So, I mean, I think I reflect on Hampshire, and there's loads of great visitor attractions from museums to theme parks to obviously places like yourself. I mean, is there a network of chief executive organisations that work?
I'd say I have been really lucky that I've been introduced to all the other sort of leaders of the other visitor attractions and spent some time with some of them, and everyone's been super supportive. I think it's quite a supportive network within Hampshire. I think we could do more to form a more sort of formal alliance, I guess, and learn from each other and come to convene together to have a sort of regional narrative around the visitor economy here. Because I think we've got some amazing visitor attractions here. Listening, if they fancy a week's holiday in the UK, Hampshire is the place to come. I'll do my bit for Hampshire tourism there. But certainly there is that really kind of everyone does, one does well, we all do well mentality. It's not a sort of competitive mentality within Hampshire. And it's exactly the same, I have to say, within the zoo, the wider zoo industry as well. The other CEOs of the other charity zoos have been incredibly welcoming and incredibly sort of helpful, supportive. And that's the sort of peer network that I have already lent on a bit, but probably will lean on more, spending time with Matthew, who's the CEO of ZSL, Jamie's is the CEO of Chester Zoo. I mean, we're not competing geographically with them, and they're not with us. So it's a really open forum, and people really share and want to help each other, which is great because ultimately, again, we're all here to do good. We're all here to, no one's here to line their own pockets. Everyone's here to do good for biodiversity, prevent extinction, whatever the purpose of your organisation is. It's all boiled down to save wildlife ultimately. So So those
that's
are
great.
really strong peer networks that I found.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you reflect on your career to date and the journey that you've been on, how you and now in this role that you described a few times in this conversation as that dream job, everything coming together in one. Are there things that you reflect on in your career that have been really important to you, or maybe people, or maybe courses, that have really training that's really opened up these opportunities?
I think you always learn from working for or alongside really good people, don't you? And equally, you learn from the bad ones as well. And there's been a few of those, which I certainly won't name. But I've had some really, really good bosses over the years who have developed me and who have seen my potential, and similarly some peers as well. And I think you also learn from the teams that you have. I mean, my team at Westquay, I couldn't have asked for a lovely group of people to work with who are more dedicated and committed. I really enjoyed working with them for 4 years alongside, and learned a lot as well. I'm trying to think if there's any sort of like standout moments where I thought I've really learned from this. You learn from your mistakes as well, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly I've learned from where I put my foot in it and upset someone, and they've been brave enough, and maybe I've been open enough that they've told me, which has been great. And I'd always rather that, because I want to know so I don't do it again, and I'm more considered next time. So I'm always really grateful for that. I'm always really grateful for if I've, as a leader, done the wrong thing. Almost you want that more than you want someone telling you that you've done a good job, because you don't learn anything from that. You just say, thanks very much. So courses wise, I mean, years ago I did Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I do always go back to that. I have to say, I do find myself using that language still. I mean, crikey, it was probably before I was married. So it was probably 16 years ago that I did that.
Yeah.
But, I do find myself saying, start with the end in mind and seek to be understand before being understood, and sharpen the saw. I do say all those things. So I guess that really did stick doing that.
An impact. So
probably quite impactful. The other one is insights as well, the colours. I've done that in several organisations. I'm a yellow red with a healthy dose of green and not much blue. But I mean, my husband and I talk about that all the time because he's done it a lot as well. So
right, okay.
Husband. So that's very, very useful. I've always found that really useful in relating to people and working out how to get the best out of people. Yeah. So I think you just learn all the time, and there's things I look back on now that I did in my sort of 20s. When I had teams, I think, oh God, why did you do that? And equally, I'm sure in another 15 years, there'll be things I look back on here now and think, why did you do that?
Yes, that's right. I mean, you're always continually learning, right? I mean, that's just.
If they think they do, then they're normally the people who are the bad bosses, if I'm honest.
Yes, that's right. Indeed. Yeah. And if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice when you were at the very start of your career, or a nugget of information that you think would be really helpful, what is it that you'd go back and tell your younger self, do you think?
I would say that volunteer, do these positions. And actually it's funny, I gave a talk to my team on Volunteer Week. I held a little session for the team, or anyone who wanted to come, really, just about how volunteering can further your career. I came quite late to being sort of on a board or as a voluntary, as a trustee. But actually, if I'd have done that alongside my role for 10 years at M&B, if I'd have volunteered for a few more things, been on a few boards, learned more about governance, it would have given me so much more earlier. And you kind of think maybe, oh well, I'm not that qualified, they won't want me. I think that's quite an easy thing to think. But actually, people are always crying out for people who have got the time to give. And I look back on that now and I think I had no children at the time, so I had, what was I doing? What did I do with all my time? And why wasn't I on a couple of boards? Why wasn't I volunteering for a charity? As a board member and learning about those sort of decisions, because that's invaluable. The skills you learn. So that would be a piece of advice, I'd say, and just, just take opportunities as they come.
Yeah, indeed. And Laura, I absolutely love that. We're constantly, when I'm talking to people about how do I make this transition from different sector into the charity sector, I say, well, actually, one of the things you could go do now is look at where you can use your skills to volunteer on a trustee board or to volunteer in some delivery of service within a local organisation to you, because there's a charity on your doorstep, I can guarantee, that's crying out for support and help. And it absolutely, I think, when you're interviewing in a place, in a charity, and you're coming from a commercial or a different sector, if you've got that voluntary stuff on your CV, it actually just really demonstrates your appreciation for the sector and the fact that you're driven by that purpose, that value, that wanting to do good. That it can just help reassure, I think, a trustee board that they're hiring someone in who understands the sector as well.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And you will develop from doing it.
Yeah,
you never know where those sort of positions are going to take you, and the kind of people you're going to meet as well. Because you're sitting around in a room of people that are probably not from your industry. It could be from anywhere. I mean, I look at the diversity of our trustees on Southampton Board. Really diverse. Really, you've got CEO of the Mayfair Theatre. You've got Lady Woodford Pollock, who has got a background in the arts and broadcasting. Used to be the chair of the Arts Council. But also you've got then someone from finance, people from universities, Vice Chancellor of London Met. They're not all people from the arts just because it's an arts and culture charity. And just the different conversations and the things you learn from those people is really, really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, I just want to say thank you for coming on and to sharing a little bit of your story with us. It's been really insightful, really helpful conversation. So pleased to hear that things are going so well in that transition for you and in the new role. I've got to admit, we are holidaying at home for a week here in Hampshire, myself and the family. So Marwell, it's on the list. It's on the list. I can promise you that.
Most of August, making sure we're packing in as many as we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to get your hands dirty.
Yeah. No, that's good, and that's great to see from the chief executive right in there in the action, helping out. So no, that's brilliant. Laura, when we put this out on the podcast, are you happy that we sort of tag you on LinkedIn? If people, people listening that maybe got a question or two, or just want us to drop you a note, are you happy if kind of come that route?
Fine. Yes, of course.
Yeah, perfect. Well, once again, great to have you on. I feel like we'll have to do this again in a little bit of time just to see how things are progressing and developing as we go.
Give me a year, as they say, and then come back and see how we're getting on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Lovely. Well, thank you, Laura. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for this week on the Charity Changemakers podcast. Remember, you can be the change you want to see in the world. We hope that this episode has inspired you to get out there and make a difference. This podcast was brought to you by Charisma Charity Recruitment, one of the UK's leading recruitment consultancies for the charity sector. Whether you're a passionate professional seeking your next challenge or a charity searching for a top-tier talent, Charisma Charity Recruitment can help. Visit their website at charismarecruitment.co.uk to explore their latest positions and to connect your organisation with the change makers shaping the future of the non-profit world. Thanks for joining us.